Welcome back to All the Cars I've Loved Before, the podcast where we park the specs at the door to focus on the stories that actually matter. It's time to throw on that faded car-themed t-shirt or hat, get a little grease under our nails, and step back in time. And we're here to talk about that very first car, that sense of pure freedom with the windows down, the music pin, and your best friends in the back. And because at the end of the day, every car tells a story, and those stories reveal exactly who we were and who we have become. Whether it's a forgotten beater, a lifelong project, or just the way we're diving into the personal history behind the metal. I'm Doug, going solo tonight without my co-host Dave, and this is the podcast where car culture meets your life story. So we're going to get into it. Just as way of quick updates, and welcome back everyone. I'm coming to you from Myrtle Beach, where I'm on a little mini vacation with some family members. So blurred the background just so you don't have to see the fancy room that I'm in. Not so fancy. By way of updates, we recently released, we had 2 weeks ago, we had our podcast update with Marla. Marla started VWwomen.com. She is a lifelong Volkswagen fanatic, going back to owning her dad's car. 1976 Volkswagen Super Beetle in sunshine yellow that he went to Germany and bought and brought over. It has been in the family ever since, now 50 years. And it got her into, with her profession of being a professional photographer, it got her into enjoying Volkswagens. And during the pandemic, like many people looking for something else to do, she started connecting with other women that are friendly and interested in Volkswagens, especially the air-cooled variety. And she travels the U.S. taking their pictures and sharing their stories on her website, VWwomen.com. The audio podcast was released previous Tuesday, and now the full video podcast for those who want to see Marla and some clips, as well as Dave and myself, that is available on YouTube.com. So feel free to check that out on our channel. And if you like what you hear, welcome back. Tell a friend. It helps us grow. And Miss Maggie the Bug says, the guys do a great job telling stories about cars. They're really good at keeping it interesting and fun. Love the show. Keep up the good work, guys. Thank you, Miss Maggie the Bug, and your owner. Much appreciated. And without further ado, we are going to introduce Mike Maurer, who has many stories over many decades, including how he got into Porsches and the whole automobile scene. But one of his, how I met Mike is just met him at a car show, and he happened to mention that he had been selling Porsches since the 1980s, but his love for cars goes farther back. So welcome to the show, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Doug. A pleasure to be here.
Yeah, our pleasure. So please tell us a little bit about your love for Porsches, and we're going to kind of weave it in. Love for cars overall, and I think it extends back to some early times with your father.
Yes, very much so. Even growing up as an infant and a toddler, my next-door neighbor was a Ford executive, and he would bring home new cars all the time. And that planted the seed, I think, that made me a car guy. My father was a Navy officer, so we lived all over the U.S., Europe, Africa, Hawaii. And my fondest memories are sitting in the back seat of a 356 bathtub Porsche driving all over Europe. So the seed was planted very early on, and Porsche was the thing that I really was my fascination. And it later became my occupation. So my fascination became occupation.
Yeah. And you may have, and I'm sure you'll tell a little bit about it, working as a Porsche salesman for all those decades, you were probably bringing home new cars fairly often just to
Yes, I was.
test drive, break them in, so to speak, if you will. Yeah.
Well, when I first started in the automotive industry, you had demonstrators, and of course, you paid $100 a month. And then another dealer that I worked for said, "We'll sell you a new Porsche car for cost, but you can't sell it for 1 year." So I would have a new Porsche every year. I would spec it out. So it was just a fun way to go.
Yeah.
And you were supposed to drive your product. If you didn't know the product, how could you sell it? So
Right. Yeah. Perks of the job, right? It's something to look forward
yes,
to
indeed.
every year as well. And and if you love cars and you're selling them, you're probably loving your job. So,
Yes, very much so. Although every job has its
right.
downsides,
Of course.
long hours, a brutal workforce. If you didn't perform, you were fired. But I made a point of making sure I hung on and stayed with the dealerships. I only worked for about 4 dealers in all the years that I spent selling and managing.
Was over about 4 decades, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
10 years here and 10 years
Yep,
there.
yep, yep. Yeah, and you saw it all. You saw Porsche went through some rough times at different periods, and yeah, we're gonna talk about that. And before we get into your first car, I'm gonna pose a trivia question, and I know you know the answer, so we're gonna hold it to the end, but I'll
Okay.
let you answer it at the end. What was the 911 Porsche 911 originally called, and why did it have to change the name? So we'll save that till almost the very end of the episode, and can't wait to hear your version of the story, which I'm sure is this version that most of us know, but many people don't know that story. So, and I do appreciate you have a 993 turbo poster behind you. I think one of the great, and maybe it was yourself, Mike, when we were talking when we met. It might be the poster that says "Kill bugs faster." Is that it?
Kills bug fast. Yes.
Kills bug fast. Yep. So, in nice hindsight to what the car is capable of doing, you want a way to kill your bugs. Can't go wrong with a 993 turbo, right?
I have a large collection of Porsche posters,
I
and
bet.
this is one of my favorite, if not one of my favorites, if not the favorite. But that's the one that I framed the minute I saw it, and who knows? We all have our
Yeah.
favorites.
Yeah, yeah, for
This
sure.
is my favorite.
Yeah. And what is that color called? That purple
That
maroon
that particular car is Arena Red.
arena red. Beautiful color. Yeah. And that's what I always think of when I see a 993, like especially maybe it's just I'm funneling that picture or that poster, if you will. So very
Mhm.
Porsche's always been good at ad campaigns, so for sure.
Very much. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So with that said, tell us about your personal first car, which was surprised everyone, not a Porsche.
No, a 1957 Austin Healey 100. I was in high school and I was walking home and walked by what was then a Chrysler Plymouth Dodge dealership, and they had this wreck of a white Austin Healey on the very back end of the lot. It had plants growing around it. It was junk. And I thought, ooh, I'd love to buy that. I'd been saving to go to college, but I thought I've got enough money to buy that. So I brought it home and my dad was highly upset. You spent all your college money to buy a car, an old piece of junk? So yes, I did.
Mhm.
My first car, fun car. It wouldn't start the second day that I had it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So were you a shade tree mechanic before that?
well, I thought I was, but I learned
Uh-huh.
very early on that, no, I'm better off having someone else fix it.
And one of our questions in our survey, or if you will, intake was, what makes you smile when you think about that first car? Obviously, you had a great laugh of one, telling your dad you spent the money for college on the car, and then two, the next day it wouldn't start. So what what else makes you laugh or happy when you think back on that car?
It was my first car. The
Mhm.
sound of the exhaust in the engine was throaty, whereas all the Porsches were air cooled. So they had a distinct, wonderful sound, but the Austin Healey had a really nice, deeper throat. And then frustration, I got rid of that car 6 months after I owned it. But always in the back of my mind was, I'd love to have an Austin Healey again. But I was in the military, and when I was promoted to an officer rank, a commissioned officer, I had enough money to go buy one. So I bought a brand spanking new one. The monthly payment was $134, and I made $303 a month. So, but I had a brand spanking new Austin Healey 3000.
And it was a large upgrade, right, over the previous one, and in many ways, not just in being 10 years newer than
Mhm.
the prior car, but how long did you keep that car for?
I kept
Austin?
that one about 2 years until I wrecked it, racing a friend of mine in the woods in Annapolis. He had Lotus Elan, and I couldn't
Mhm,
keep up with him. I tried, and I lost it, ran into a tree, didn't hurt myself, totaled the
mhm,
car, and I
mhm.
had enough money from the insurance payment to buy a new 911 Porsche. And that
Aha,
that became my love affair with Porsche, my ownership affair, and that
and it
began.
it paved the way,
Yes.
right?
Oh, it
Yeah,
certainly did. One after the other after
yeah,
the other.
yeah,
And the way historically Porsche pricing was, the supply of Porsche cars was always less than the demand, so prices stayed very, very constant. I could buy one, keep it 2 years, keep it well because I love keeping the cars as perfect as possible, and I could sell it 2 years later, and it wouldn't really cost much to trade up to a 2-year-old newer car. But every couple of years, I'd get the itch, and I'd want different options, and I got to know the Porsche line very well before I ever started selling them.
And I know many of our listeners are going to want to know this question, and as do I. How did you make the switch to become one in car sales, and I assume post-military duty, and two, why Porsche? How did that story happen?
Porsche primarily from having ridden around with my family in Europe.
Mhm.
But the Porsche was always just a little bit out of my reach financially, so I
Mhm.
would skip on meals to afford a Porsche.
Well, that was a creative solution. And how did you get into the business?
When I picked up a new car, one of the owners of the dealership said, "Mike, how did you know so much about these cars?" I was working as a photographer at the time, doing
Oh,
travel photography, and I was tired of traveling. My wife was about to give birth to a baby, and I thought, "I need to stay at home. What do I know? What?" And the dealership owner said, "Come to work for me." So he said, "But before you start selling Porsche, Mike, I want you to go down the street and I want you to sell the Toyotas." And I thought, I'm never going to get to Porsche
right,
to
right.
sell 20 Toyotas in a month. So I decided I was bound and determined I will sell 20 and I will get a job at Porsche. And I did. And the rest, as they say, is history in that regard.
Gotcha, gotcha. And that we're both from Annapolis. So was that the Porsche dealer in Annapolis that used to be? I think it's a Nissan dealer now.
No, I left Annapolis after high school, went
Okay,
into the
gotcha.
military, and then I ended up in Florida working for a Florida dealership. And we had Porsche, Audi, and Rolls-Royce. Dealership called Brumos, Brumos, which to Porsche files, people who follow Porsche, Brumos was a legendary dealership. The owner raced along, his name was Peter Gregg, and his co-owner was Hurley Haywood, who are both legendary Porsche endurance racers. So I started with a very legendary dealership, and that enabled me to go from Florida to we opened a branch in Atlanta. So I worked in Atlanta for several years, worked in Colorado for several years, and came back to the Maryland, D.C., Virginia area.
Gotcha, gotcha. And you're actually wearing a Brumos Racing shirt. So
Mhm.
that was a great introduction for me because I had not heard of them, but I appreciate that. Now I think when I at the you had a Porsche shirt on, so now Brumos, now it's all adding together. So no, thanks for sharing that. So jumping around a little more, a lot has changed since selling cars, and I know you're not actively in sales anymore for a little bit, but a lot has changed in buying and selling cars since you started. And what would you say the part looking back that you miss the most about it, right? Certainly a lot has happened with the internet and of course the way people buy and sell and even consume products has changed considerably.
I miss, well, after the cars, the people that I knew, that I met, that I became frankly friends with, lifelong friends. To this day, I still socialize with many of my clients and customers over the years. I now advise, I help people find high-end cars because I'm pretty familiar with the marketplace and I have a reputation that I've tried to maintain as being straightforward, honest, and not a crook by any stretch. So, but that's been my activity, and I miss seeing the people really on a daily basis.
Yeah. I would imagine thinking about the cars and going from my own experience in IT. When I first started, they would fly us out and we'd learn about the new product,
Yeah.
right? And we'd meet with everybody. And then in the days of WebEx and everything else, it became all virtual. And I'm sure there was some element of that in your career as well.
Well, very much so, yeah. Although Porsche training, they wanted us to
Mhm.
know our new products, product introduction. As time passed from the '80s to the product introductions got fancier and fancier. And as I was a sales manager for many years, I would go to Europe, Spain, Germany, Canary Islands, for example, to see new Porsche product and drive the cars. Typically, it was a 3-day introduction. I was very, very lucky and managed to drive Porsche cars on many of the famous racetracks here in the US, West Coast, the South, all over. So I do miss that because it's fun
Mhm.
to somebody
Yeah.
else's car and drive it on the racetrack, knowing that if you wreck it, it's their car, not mine.
Yep. Yep. Gotcha. So and again, I'm channeling all the listeners, right? What is the guy who's sold Porsches for 40 years? What is your daily driver, Mike?
Right now, I'm driving a 997. That translates to a 2007 Carrera 4S, and that means it's now almost 20 years old.
Yeah.
It's considered the last of the analog cars. When my car was upgraded, shall we say, changed, they lengthened the wheelbase significantly. The 911 got quite a bit bigger, and it got digital. So the still many of the people who are rabid Porsche people want a more digital experience than a more analog experience than the newer
Mhm.
cars also. So that
Right.
it's an analog car. It's a manual transmission.
Mhm.
I personally love that. I've had a lot of them, but that's a keeper. So
Yeah. And any other Porsches in the family?
got a Macan that we call it the grocery and the dog car. So
Go ahead. Sorry.
base model
Yep.
Macan.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
every time I get into it, I push sport button so that it changes the revs, firms the suspension, and makes it actually a fun car to drive for a CUV, a compact utility.
Right. And that has the Volkswagen 2-liter turbo engine, correct?
It does.
With the PDK though, is my
The
understanding.
PDK,
Yeah,
uh-huh.
they figured out how to make it all work.
Yes, and the PDK is really a wonderful transmission. When it was first introduced, the Porsche buyers all went, "No, I'm not gonna buy a Porsche with an automatic." That rapidly changed, especially people who track the cars, autocross them. It's much quicker and faster and easier to drive than a manual. So,
But just not the same.
not the same. Although
Right.
I'm a diehard, I'll keep shifting gears. I want 3 pedals on the floor.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, it's harder and harder to find manuals, right? And Porsche themselves, right? I think I've heard maybe 15% of the cars have manuals
Little
these
more on
days.
the
Was
sports
that
cars. It's
okay?
hard because Porsche will lump together all the vehicles from the 4 doors and the 2 doors. A little bit higher take, and if you specifically say 911 model, probably closer to 40% are manual, because 'cause you've gotta go into PDK manual on GT3s, but Tourings, you can get a manual. Porsche will probably be one of the very last makers to offer manual transmissions.
Yeah, they're still listening to their customers, and that's a good thing to hear.
Yep.
Yeah. So shifting back to some old cars, we talked about your early cars. I'm going to hold on to your dream car till we get a little farther along. What was your least favorite car and why?
2 least favorites.
Okay, 2.
2,
Perfect.
they
Uh-huh.
both qualify as least favorite.
Okay.
When I was working in Colorado, I would drive 30 miles from Denver to Boulder, and I would take home a used car every night to sort of sort it out, find out what was wrong with it, and recommend to the mechanics how to make it more marketable, how to fix it for sale. I drove a Metro Geo. I don't even think anybody knows what a Metro Geo is. It
Oh, I
was
do.
Oh, you do? It was a
Oh, yeah.
spin well, Geo Metro was painful to drive. Loud, noisy, wooden track, horrible brakes,
3-cylinder engine, 1 liter,
three-cylinder.
3-cylinder. Yeah.
Oh, just awful in every way. It was a terrible car. And
Yeah.
the other one was we always have had dogs, and we always need something to transport large Bernese mountain dogs in. So we bought a Saab Turbo pre-owned 2-year-old car. Fun to drive, but
Mhm.
what a nightmare in terms of maintaining it. That was the Saab Turbo. Nope. You see that there's no more Saabs.
Yeah, they had, at least prior to GM buying them, they had their own special following. They were like that. They were like a Subaru. No offense, they had a unique customer base, and they loved those cars.
Absolutely. They were
Yeah.
as dedicated as Porsche people. The store that I worked at in Atlanta, the Brumos, Atlanta, we had a Volvo dealership, Saab dealership directly across the street. And the Saab owners would, because they were car people, they would come in and check out the Porsche. And I learned very early on, the Saab people really knew their stuff. They were true enthusiasts about it, and that kind of went downhill, but such as business world. So.
Right. Yep. Yep. For sure. Right. Yeah. The platform sharing and all the other pieces. And then there was the Saab SUV and yeah, just, which was really I don't know, some Chevy vehicle, right? That they slapped the Saab badge on. There was even a Subaru with a Saab badge on as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
But they all had that unique turn the key was down on the bottom near the driver's knee.
Yes, it was, and most people didn't realize that. They'd get in the car and wonder, how do I get out of this thing?
Right.
How do I shut it off?
Right. And how do I shut it off? When I brought my first Tesla home, I'm like, how do I turn it?
Yes.
You lock the doors. That's all, and it does it for you. So we're jumping around a little more through our podcast journey here, and you had a great answer for this. Looking back, what was a favorite song? Thinking about cars, maybe it was when you were racing your friend in the Lotus Elan. I'm not sure when it happened, but what was one of your favorite songs that when you hear it, you think about one of those early cars, you're in your car, you can't not listen to it.
Life in the Fast Lane by the Eagles.
Excellent song. Yeah, excellent song. And I'm going to have to do some clips from our podcast, and I'm going to include that song in the audio portion for everybody who's listening. So what was the car that you wish you had never sold?
I had a 1967 911S that I bought from the original owner. I had sold him a large Audi A8, and I'd had no idea that he even owned Porsche. And we started chatting, and he said, you're a Porsche guy. He goes, why don't you come out and I want to show you one of my cars. And about a month later, I went out to he and his wife's home, and he had a small little barn, tiny. Come on outside, I want to show you something. And he uncovered this pristine 67 911S that he had owned for 50 years. And my mouth fell open, and I thought, oh my gosh. And he said, yeah, I have 3 daughters, and my daughters are all fighting me. He says that I'm getting too old to drive it, and my 3 daughters want it. They're fighting over who gets the car. Well, this man and I became friends over the period of a couple of years. He was a retired medical doctor, and one day he said, come on over to the house. I want you to have dinner with Julie and I. And he said, Mike, you're going to buy the red car. And I said, what? He goes, no, it's yours. And I said, well, I can't afford it. He said, don't worry about how much it costs. I want you to have it. You're so passionate about it. I don't want 3 daughters fighting over it, because whoever gets it will allow it to not be cared for the way you. And I thought, my gosh. So he quote unquote gave it to me. And he said, just pay me some money whenever you can. So I would send him little amounts, big amounts. I'd go by the house and say, I think I ended up paying him about $20,000 for that car. I kept it for 17 years and then sold it for my kids' college tuition. I got what I thought was a great deal of money for it. I knew that I would miss it, sold it to a gentleman who took it to Australia, and he and I still communicate to this day.
Oh, wow.
He said, Mike, I'll give you the first right of refusal. He goes, it's in Australia, but I'll give you the first right if you want to buy it back. And a few years ago, I was in a position. I said, you want to sell it to me? He goes, yeah. He goes, the market has changed over the last 7 years. He said, I'll sell it to you for $200,000. And I went, but I sold it to you for $75,000 because, I put a lot of money into it. I said, but you didn't put $125,000. He goes, nope, but I'm going to sell it and you can have it for. And I went, keep it, don't sell it. And he did, and he still has it.
Yeah. But he gave you first rights of refusal.
He did. The market crashes, I'll call him.
Well, that's another great story, right? And just building those friendships. Like these are 2 friendships over a long period of time tied to one car, which is really pretty awesome. when, I'm just thinking about how great it was to have maintained that friendship.
Oh, yeah.
And then you had the car in the middle, right? And that's what we're here to talk about, the podcast, but the podcast is really about stories, right?
Yeah.
The car is our famed backdrop for those stories.
Well, it's interesting that the friendships, for example, cars that I've personally owned, we've had lots and lots of Porsche cars, and every once in a while, I'll be sorting through my junk or my drawers, and I'll find something like a key fob, and I'll say, "Oh, that goes to the Cayenne that I sold to the Air Force officer out in Colorado." So I'll put it in an UPS or a FedEx envelope and send it off, and they go, "Thank you so much." But, those cars have maintained friendships for years that you would never, ever guess that they would last that long. No.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that story. I think that story is going to circulate widely in our clips
Well,
and
that's
and social media banter. So I do want to ask you, we're going to sort of start winding down here, but no wrong answer here. What advice do you have for somebody looking to jump into sales, ideally with Porsche? Somebody who's like yourself, 40 years ago, right? I want to sell cars, and Brumos put you through that program, their self-made program. Sell
Yeah.
20 Toyotas first. What's your advice for somebody in this day and age?
Ooh, it's a much friendlier selling environment now. Do the same thing that I did, approach someone, a manager at a Porsche dealer, or if you wanna sell another brand, the Mercedes store or the BMW dealership, and talk to the person and say, "I'm interested in going to work and selling. What would you recommend I do?" I would also investigate if I were in my 20s right now, I would check out the manufacturer. I would go to the Porsche headquarters and say, "You know, I'd like to be with the corporate headquarters in Atlanta or regional. I'd like to be a regional manager." So they call that the wholesale end of things. The manufacturer sells to the dealers, and the dealers then retail them. So talk to the manufacturers. There are other avenues too. You can go say, bring a trailer. There are jobs with bring a trailer where online you can oversee auctions, lots and lots, but start at the dealership level and see what kind of feedback you get.
Okay, great.
Expect here are the caveats are extremely long hours. You'll work 11 to 12 hours a day. You'll work a minimum of 5 days a week, sometimes 6, and sometimes even 7 days a week. And intoxicating, it's a fun environment because you're busy, 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 and you meet really nice people. It's a good way to go.
And would you say the sales cycles for Porsche or exotic cars are longer than your Toyota? Not
That
really.
leasing has been a boon to high-end vehicles because you lease it for 3 years, and you've gotta come back and replace it. A
Right.
lot of the Porsche buyers do, in fact, purchase the leased vehicle off of lease, but the majority want the new one, get the latest, greatest, and that's human nature. So,
Right. No, thank you. That's great advice. Sorry to throw that at you. Had a great answer. And I think about if I could go back, and I always loved cars. I went a different route, of course, in IT, but
yeah.
now the IT has circled me back to cars, and I'm having the time of my life with this podcast. So thank
Oh,
you. Thank you
yeah.
for being on it.
No, it's my pleasure.
So before we wind down, we had that trivia question, Mike, and I can't wait to hear how you answer it. I already know the answer, but you may have more insight or a better story than I could tell. So, Mike, why was the Porsche 911 not sold? Sorry, to back up,
Hmm.
Porsche originally planned to sell the Porsche 911 as the Porsche 901, and that did not happen for or several reasons. Please share that with us.
You're absolutely right. It was the 901 because within the factory, the Porsche factory, the design project was numerically called the 901 project. There are and have been throughout Porsche's history designations, model designations. So the 901 was to supersede the 356. So 901 it was. Early Porsche parts are stamped 901, so you know that it's an old one. Why did it not make it as a 901? Because the French automotive manufacturer had patents on all three-digit cars with a zero in the middle. I remember living in France, and we had 505s, 303s, 904s. So they said to Porsche, "We own all the numbers, the three-digit numbers with zero in the middle." So that's why the 911 became 911 and not 901.
Right. That's great. I did not know that about the zero in the middle, so that
Yeah.
adds even more depth to the story. Thank you, Mike. That was great.
My head is
Great
so
part of the
full of
story.
trivia, Doug. I
Yeah,
have so much Porsche trivia, it just
yeah. So here's one. So Porsche, I'll throw another one at you. So Porsche, at least all Porsche sports car models have a start with a 9, right? It could have been a 951. Porsche, I think until the 991 series, it hadn't said 911 on it since, I want to say the 80s, probably, right? But even back then, it was called the G50, right? If I have that correct. So, and today's model is at a 992
yes, yeah,
is the current one. So it's the 911, but the model is a 992. If you can
yes.
elaborate on that?
Well, going back to 19 gosh, if you have enough time, if we go
Yes.
back to 1984, the up till 1984 model, they were all 911s, 911Ts, 911Ss, or just straight 911. In 1984, Porsche called the 911 a Carrera.
The Carrera, that's right.
Yes. And people went, "Well, is that a 911?" Yes, it's a 911, but it's a Carrera. So over the years, it was a Carrera. It then became a 9964, a 993, always with the 9 as the first digit. Now, little known thing, you
Mm.
could spec your car to have 911 badging. No, not very many people knew that they could do that. They thought that you had to have Carrera or no badging. Quite a
Okay.
few people. If you notice on the rear engine lid of some of the 992s, the current cars, you'll see
Mhm.
911, not to put 911 Carrera descriptive or a paragraph, as I call it. And
Yeah,
they,
yeah,
they say, delete all of that and put 911 on the back.
yeah, and Porsche is probably known. I know we could just keep going on, and I can't stop myself. Porsche probably has more vehicle combinations than any other car company, including option packages, as you said, including deletes, right? So I
Yes.
want to spec my car. I just wanted to say 911.
Yeah.
That is an option when you order, right?
Absolutely, positively. And Porsche needs to reduce the model numbers. There's
Yep.
so many. I right now that I believe there are 42 different variations of a 911, which is insane. If
Yep.
I'm manufacturing them, I'm gonna make 3 or 4. I'll keep my manufacturing cost down, therefore my profit margins up. But they got they got down that rabbit hole of offering too many variations. That will change. Porsche's having some financial issues right now. They were heavily involved in electric vehicles, and they found that did not work.
Right.
So they're retreating. And I expect you'll start seeing fewer and fewer variations of Porsche 911.
Interesting. I didn't know it was 42. I knew it was at least 19 or 20. So, yeah, yeah. No, trying to be all things to all people, right? Yeah. And then you need an expert like yourself to, how do I order a Porsche with
Yeah.
the options I want? You need that secret decoder ring, Mike.
Well, I was lucky enough, having stayed for so many years with Porsche, I got to know the factory people, and I selectively picked a group of clients that I took very good care of, and I built cars that most dealers would never be able to. Too many options, I can create even more options if you want.
All the bodies are buried, right?
Yeah, I
So to speak.
unfortunately do.
Yep.
Used to get into a fight with the importer, which was Porsche Cars North America. They would say to me, "Mike, you can't order that." And I'd say, "Well, I already talked to the factory. The factory said I can."
Yeah.
They didn't like me because, "Well, you're just complicating things. You're not supposed to
Right.
talk to the factory." Well,
Right. Yeah. But it's what I do, right? That's
what I
my,
do, I wanna make
yeah.
yeah, I'm here to make my people happy, so
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So Mike, before we close down the podcast, how do people find you?
Mike911 at gmail.com.
Okay.
My
Mhm.
son was a Googler at the time when Gmail came out. He
Mhm.
said,
I remember.
"Dad," he says, "Go ahead and pick a Gmail box." So I 911 Mike911 was my first choice. Mike911 at Gmail. And that'll take you to all my contact info.
Mike, appreciate it.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah, no, and hopefully we can have you back again for more car stories and unique Porsche trivia and just all the things that are hidden away in that huge brain of yours from all that history. And yeah, glad we met that one fateful day in
Agree.
the store. So
Yes.
hope to see you at more car shows now that it's warming up.
Oh,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
And give a call, send me a note anytime, Doug.
Yeah, definitely. So you have just been riding shotgun with To All the Cars I've Loved Before. This is the podcast celebrating the metal that shaped our lives and the stories that keep them running. And if today's podcast sparked a memory of your own first ride or a project gathering dust in the garage, we want to hear about it. Reach us via social media or stories@carslove.com. And thanks to our special guest, Mike Maurer. And if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, please follow us, tell a friend, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That's the best way to help our community grow. All of our content, from our social media links to all past 70 plus episodes, that's right, up over 70 full episodes, including Mike's episode by the time you hear this, on our link tree, linktr.ee/carsloved. And until next time, keep the windows down and don't forget to share the stories that are in the rear view mirror of life.